Hello. Oh shit. Hello. Welcome back to a reaction stream. It's been a while since I last made a reaction stream. I was supposed to play Omori, but my throat it's bad. My throat hurts so bad. So I was like, might as well do a reaction stream. It requires more listening than talking. So yeah, here I am. Uh hungry, tired. But yeah, who cares? It's fine. Today we have uh Beauty and the Beast because that's my favorite Disney movie, at least princess movie. And Swan Princess? Yeah, the Swan Princess and what is it? The Princess and the Frog. But the Swan Princess is divided in two parts, so I guess maybe we won't be able to watch the Princess and the Frog. Maybe, I don't know. Depends how long it takes. Cause last time we had like 3 videos, 4 videos as well, and they were all like 10 minutes long. It wasn't long, and the stream lasted for like 2 hours or something. So yeah, that's what we'll see with two, if we do 2 videos or all 3 movies. And let's see if my childhood gets ruined. Why do I do this to myself? Because I honestly I like the dark side of things. You know why? I don't know, but that's me. Maybe there's something wrong with my hair head. I'm sorry, but anyways, it's fine. Now, am I too big? I think I'm fine. I think I'm okay. Anyway, let's start. Actually, gonna turn up the volume on the video, and let's go.
It's that time of year again, mere mortals. February, the month of love, romance, candy hearts,
I'm gonna
and
turn it
going
up
into some light
like
credit card debt
this.
to prove your affection for someone has returned. Valentine's Day is coming up, and with that in mind,
It
I
is
want to
actually.
explore the messed up origins of one of the most famous love stories ever told, Beauty and the Beast.
Yay.
That little teapot wasn't lying when she called it a tale as old as time. While the Disney movie may be the most famous example of this archetype in action, it was nowhere near the first. Humans have been telling stories about beautiful women and their
Wow.
beastly lovers for literally thousands of years, going all the way
Hooray.
back to the ancient Greeks. And I've got to tell ya, some of them are straight up disturbing. The stories I'm going to share with you today will not only change the way you watch the Disney film forever, you'll gain a newfound appreciation for it, and the insane stories that inspired it. Before we dive in though, I want to share some really exciting news. We just dropped another new design over at meremortals.store. The beautiful shirt you see before you. You may have heard that Disney's first animated short, Steamboat Willie, recently entered the public domain. Well, since we've spent the past 6 years discussing how Disney takes these beloved and messed up fairy tales and cleans them up for modern audiences, I wanted to do the exact opposite with their most iconic character. So I reached out to my boy Kenjiro and we collaborated on this truly disgusting Steamboat Willie design, as well as this putrid looking emblem.
Are we
Then
supposed
slapped
to
them on
be?
the
Can
comfiest
we watch
t-shirts,
this?
sweatshirts, and hoodies
I
we
mean,
can find.
hey,
If
check
you want to snag
check
one for your next trip to
uh,
Disney World, or
check
even
his
the next Messed Up
merch.
Origins episode
I
drop, I
guess.
put a link to meremortals.store in the description. And right now you can get 10% off the entire drop with promo code
But I think this was like
But now,
2 years
without
ago.
further
I don't
ado,
know.
I present the messed up origins of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, please. Act 1, The Fall from Grace.
So I'm going to address the big beast in the room. I have covered this story's origins before. It was our 6th episode of this series back in December of 2017.
Oh, wow.
And while I think it turned out pretty good, considering I didn't know almost anything about folklore or mythology at that point, it could have been so much better. And today I intend to make up for that wasted potential, because the roots of this story are far deeper than I realized.
I'm not a fool.
Disney's animated classic is a mix of 2 well-known fairy tales that share the
A
same name.
mix
The
of
first
2?
was a full 144-page novel by French author Gabrielle Suzanne Barbeau de Villanueva in 1740,
Oh, wow, that's
and the second
quite
was
a
a
name.
shortened version of that novel written by Marie Laprince de Beaumont in 1756. And listen, regarding their
That's all.
names, I think we can all agree these are some French-ass names,
Yeah.
which means I have 2 options. Try and fail to say them in French, or say them correctly in American English. I know I'm going to get comments complaining about this, but I'm going the American English route, because that's the language I speak. When I first covered this story, I had only read Beaumont's version because I'd heard that Villanueva's story was extremely wordy and overly descriptive, as where Beaumont's was a fraction of the length and managed to tell effectively the exact same story. But this time I read Villanueva's original variant cover to cover, and holy crap does it add an insane amount of backstory. No exaggeration, the moment where the movie's credits roll and Beauty and the Beast live happily ever after is only 58% of the original. There's an entire third act that both Disney and
What?
Beaumont left out. There's no denying that third act is completely unnecessary, but the context that it adds to the story makes it a lot more interesting. And a little incesty. What? I told you the story was inspired by a Greek myth, didn't I? You remember when Disney made the live-action adaptation of Beauty and the Beast, but they were too scared to do anything unique or interesting
Such a
with it,
good
so they
movie.
just added some backstory about Belle's mom being sick and dying? Yeah, well, not the flex, but Villanueva's story invents an entire geopolitical conflict, a fairy kingdom, and a governing body of that fairy kingdom.
Wow.
We'll get to that soon enough, but first let's start at the beginning of Villanueva's story, and as we go on, I'll explain all the connections to the Disney movie as well as the ideas they took from other Beauty and the Beast stories found around Europe. Now, unlike the film, which explains right away the nature of the Beast's curse, why it happened, and how exactly he can be cured from it, Villanueva's story doesn't spoil any of that for us. Instead, it introduces us to Beauty's father, a wealthy French merchant who was widowed with 12 children. 6
12?
boys and 6 girls.
12
Every one of them
children?
is attractive, but the youngest daughter, called Beauty, is the epitome of perfection. She's also the only one of her sisters who isn't a materialistic socialite. Just like the movie, she's kind of a book nerd, and similar to Belle, whose name is French for beauty, the community sees her as a bit of an oddball.
Do you think I'm odd?
My daughter? Odd? Where would you get an
I think
idea
it's.
like that?
Wait, stop it. I think it's pretty interesting the fact that on the movie they are from a lower class, and on the book, one of the books, they are rich. I think it's a good. Is the word contrast? Contrast? I'm not sure if that's the right word I'm looking for, but like, it's good in a way that on the movie for children, they make them from a lower class, so children know that being from a higher class, like, that's not always good, you know, like being on a lower class, it's also okay, you know, like money is not everything. I think that's a good thing they did in Disney, making them on a lower class.
But that doesn't stop the local bachelors from proposing to her on a daily basis, something her sisters are infinitely jealous of. Belle doesn't have sisters, obviously, but that's probably the only way she's different from Villanueva's Beauty. At this point in their lives, Beauty's family had spent their entire existence at the height of luxury, but they're soon struck by terrible misfortune when their home burns to the ground
Oh,
and their father's
damn.
shipping vessels are all hijacked
Oh,
by pirates
shit,
or
that's
lost
bad
at sea.
luck.
Left with nothing but a
Very
small
bad
mansion in
luck.
the countryside, the family moves away from the big city and soon has to adapt to their new environment where they work for a living and can't be waited on hand and foot. This wasn't a problem for Beauty, who chose to make the best out of a bad situation and embrace the new lifestyle for her family's sake, but her sisters refuse to change and repeatedly berate her for not feeling the same way. These silly bitches actually think Beauty
Silly
is stupid for not
bitches.
realizing what they've lost and don't understand that she's just embracing the suck. Now in the movie, Belle's father Maurice is an inventor and he heads out on a little trip to enter his contraption into a contest. But in the story, the father's out-of-town excursion is triggered when he gets news that his last surviving ship just made it to port 2 years after it was thought to be lost.
Oh.
And since he's about to make a ton of money from it, he asks his daughters if they want anything from his trip. Of course, the 5 older sisters ask for clothing, jewels, and the finest dresses, but Beauty only requests that her father returns home safe. Still, he wants to get her something, so she
A
humbly
rose.
requests that he bring her a rose. Sadly,
Yes.
though, he isn't able to buy his daughters anything, because when he gets to the city, he learns his shipment was repossessed to pay back his debts, and ends up leaving the city as poor as he was before.
my
On the way
God.
home, he gets lost during a vicious snowstorm and is lucky enough to find a massive palace for him and his horse to take shelter in. Once inside, he calls out to speak with the owner, but curiously, despite the fire being lit and dinner sitting on the table, no
Wait, is that a floating hand? Oh my god, it is. Damn. 2 floating. 3 floating hands. Oh wow. If I saw that, I would immediately run out of that palace, I guess. Like, no matter how hungry or cold I am, I'm no. I'm not staying there.
one's there. And after waiting by the fire for a few hours, he finally succumbs to his hunger and helps himself to the food. He spends the night at the castle and wakes up to find his dirty clothes have mysteriously been replaced with brand new fresh fly threads. Then he gets his horse from the stable and heads out to leave. But on his way out, he passes through a garden and notices a bush growing the most beautiful roses he'd ever seen. Remembering Belle's request, he picks a few of them to make a bouquet, a decision he would immediately regret. The moment the merchant plucks that
Oh,
first
wow.
rose, he's tackled to the ground by a monster who calls himself the
elephant?
Beast. And it's here that we get our only physical description of him, which says he has an elephant's trunk. I'm kind of glad
What the- I am so glad it did not in the Disney movie. That would have ruined everything. Oh my god. No.
Disney chose to leave out that detail.
Yeah.
The merchant is quick to apologize
Oh
and
my
explains that after all the hospitality he received, he had no idea that plucking some roses for his daughter would be against the rules, but the Beast scolds him for not appreciating his generosity and sentences him to death. He does provide a way out though, and he tells the merchant that if he convinces one of his daughters to come to the palace in his place, after making it clear to her that she's going to be food for a monstrous
Oh
beast,
wow.
then he can leave. While the merchant doesn't want to do that, he does take the Beast up on the offer so he can at least say goodbye to his children before returning to receive his punishment. And in case you're wondering why the Beast would let Beauty's dad go at all, he makes a point to say that if he doesn't return, he'll hunt him down and kill his entire family. And the merchant fully believes him. But don't get it twisted, the Beast isn't a total savage. He may have placed a ton of value on those roses, but material possessions didn't mean much to him. So he sent the merchant home with several chests full of riches to give his daughters. Now you'll remember that in the movie, this goes down a bit differently. After Maurice loses his horse and escapes a pack of wolves, which are also mentioned as a threat when Beauty's dad is lost in the book, he's welcomed into the castle by these servants, but not the Beast himself. And when the Beast finds him trespassing, he takes Maurice prisoner in the tower. So Maurice doesn't actually take a rose like in the book, but Disney did find a way to incorporate it.
Never liked Beast's human form. I was so disappointed when I saw him. I was expecting something like Prince Eric from Little Mermaid, but no, we got. I don't know his name. Was it Adam? I don't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure I've heard it before. I don't remember, but yeah, we got whoever Beauty and the Beast prince is. I was disappointed. I didn't like him. Nope.
Into the story anyway with the Prince's Curse, but we'll talk more about that at the end. When the merchant returns home, he delivers the bad news to his daughters, and to no one's surprise, the 5 older ones are quick to blame Beauty for her ridiculous rose request. But to their surprise, she immediately volunteers to go in her father's place. Her brothers also step up to slay the beast themselves because, unlike the sisters, they really love Beauty, but her father is quick to shut them down because that would just lead to their needless deaths. Beauty is ultimately able to convince her father that she's going in his place, saying that even if he forbids it, she's still going to escort him to the palace and volunteer herself to the beast the moment they meet, so he has no choice but to accept it. This is not unlike the Disney movie where Belle is brought to the palace by her father's horse, discovers he's a prisoner there, and volunteers as tribute despite all his protesting. A major difference with the movie, though, is that the book's Beauty is welcomed to the palace with great ceremony and fanfare. The beast provided them with magic horses to bring them back, and when they're in view of the palace, they see an elaborate firework display that actually spells out Beauty's name. Something that would have required magic back when this was written in the 1700s, but nowadays is kind of possible thanks to the power of computers.
Nothing.
Magic is just science that we don't understand, man. Before we dive into Act 2 and talk about Beauty's imprisonment, though, I want to say thanks to our sponsor, Squarespace.
And not
Squarespace has
my
all the tools to
sponsor.
give creators of all
Okay. Act 2, Beauty and the Beast.
Act 2 is where the comparisons with the movie really start to pile up. And there's a ton of details they followed exactly, and some they went with the exact opposite. For starters, in the movie, the Beast is constantly yelling, ordering Belle and his servants around however he wants. But in the book, Beauty comments that the Beast is actually not mean at all. He's just kind of dumb and not that interesting to talk to. Both versions of Beauty do receive their own apartment though, and are given free reign to explore anywhere in the castle. The movie's Beauty is forbidden from the West Wing where the Enchanted Rose sits.
What's in the West?
It's forbidden.
But in the book, she can go anywhere
He
she
really
pleases
does have
because
a
there
short
is no
temper.
Enchanted Rose to keep safe. Just like in the movie, the castle satisfies every one of Beauty's needs. There's a giant library with more books than she could read in a lifetime. Her meals are served to her by invisible servants, and she's even treated to some dinner-time entertainment by the birds and monkeys that live in the castle.
Monkeys?
That's right, birds and monkeys. Instead of talking candlesticks
Wow,
and clocks,
okay.
this Beauty has birds and monkeys, and she can even speak with them thanks to a parrot who translates the monkey sign language. Another really interesting difference is the magic mirror.
This mirror will show you anything. Anything you wish to see.
You might recall that in the
Ooh,
movie, Beauty's
yeah.
able to use the mirror to check in on her father back home, but they actually took that detail from Beaumont's adaptation. In Villanueva's version, there is no magic mirror per se, but she does have magic windows that you can basically think of as
Magic
TVs. When she opens
windows?
up the
I
window
want
shutter,
those.
She has a balcony view of the greatest stages around the world, allowing her to watch musical performances, operas, even Italian puppet shows.
Wow.
This kind of relates to the mirror because she's able to see the audiences attending these shows and recognizes them as friends from her old social circle when she lived in the city, but it's unlike the mirror because it can't show her whatever she wants.
So
Stupid.
Beauty is able to spend her days in leisure, wanting for nothing and being endlessly entertained, and each one of her days would end with dinner and a quick check-in by the
That was
Beast,
a lot
who
of
wants to make
sugar.
sure that she's comfortable and satisfied. Soon, Beauty starts to wonder if the Beast isn't evil after all, because so far he's been a perfect gentleman. A bit on the dumb side, sure, but a gentleman nonetheless. You'll remember that in the movie, it takes a lot of convincing from the Beast to get Belle to agree to even one dinner date. But in the book, Beauty is intent on making sure the Beast is happy
my
because
God,
she's
that's
terrified
a
of pissing him off. I find it
scary
interesting
creature.
that while the movie's Beast is undeniably more aggressive and threatening than the stories, Belle stands her ground against him from the beginning, while Beauty is totally submissive,
now
despite
a
Beast
bear.
telling her that she's in control here and that if she ever wants him to leave her alone, to just ask. Part of Beauty's tension comes from the end of her nighttime routine, though.
What
For
the
every
heck is
single
that?
time the Beast checks in on her, he concludes their conversation with the same question: will you marry me? And every single time, Beauty has to reject him.
Whoa, slow down, Maurice.
She wonders how long she can keep rejecting him before he loses his patience and devours her, but nonetheless, she stands firm on her answers and the beast continues to accept it. Another detail unique to the story is that almost every night, Beauty is met by a dream visitor in the form of a handsome prince who claims to be the beast's prisoner. And throughout the story, she falls deeper and deeper in love with him while developing a different platonic kind of love for the beast. She also searches the castle top to bottom for the imprisoned prince, but has no luck. The prince isn't her only visitor though. Beauty is also visited by a beautiful woman every so often who continuously advises her that she shouldn't judge by appearances and that the only way to free her beloved prince is to give the beast a real shot at her heart, leaving Beauty conflicted about her relationships with both of her loves. Now in the
Damn,
movie,
it's like
she
a love
continues to bond
triangle
with the
almost.
beast, and just when things are going
But with
really
the
well
same
in their
person.
relationship, she looks in her mirror and sees that her father has gotten sick and needs her help. So she requests permission from the beast to visit him, and he lets her go free. Something similar happens in Villanueva's book as well, but it's not triggered by Beauty looking in the mirror. Instead, she simply misses her family, and Beast allows her to leave for a few months, kind of like Hades does with Persephone. Now, when
What? Yeah, I need to watch. Is there a video of that? John, do you have a video on that? Because I would be really interested to watch that. I love Greek mythology, and I would definitely watch that video. I will look for it. I will look for it. That sounds really interesting.
Beauty returns home, you would think that her sisters would be delighted to see that she hasn't been torn to pieces by a monster, but they weren't. Her brothers and father were ecstatic, even crying tears of joy, but her sisters quietly resented her because she was now
Why?
more beautiful than ever, and even their fiancés were requesting her hand in marriage. If she
What? Okay. First, what kind of sister do they think they are? Second, what the fuck is wrong with their fiancés? Huh? People are messed up in this story.
she survives this, they're gonna have some awkward family holidays. Beauty attends
Messed
many
up
of her
family.
sisters' weddings while she's in town, but by the end of her allotted 2 months, she's actually eager to return to the beast. Even still, she loves her family, and they mostly love her. And her brothers convince her to stay just a little while longer so they
Oh,
can soak
no.
up every second with her possible. I thought that was a really interesting twist, because in Beaumont's adaptation, it's Beauty's 2 sisters that convince her to stay longer, but it's not out of love. They're just secretly hoping the beast will get mad at her and kill her when she goes back. Yeah, I don't use the C word often, but I'm going to here. These are some catty bitches. Well, that night, Beauty has
Yeah.
a dream that the beast is dying in some kind of cave, cursing her name for abandoning him. And the thought of her losing the beast forever makes her realize that her love for him is more romantic than she previously thought. She
Ooh.
uses a magic ring to quickly return to the castle, and after a lot of searching, finds Beast dead on the cave floor.
That didn't
Oh,
go very well at all,
no.
did it?
Except that he wasn't dead. The book fakes you out and says he is, but she wakes him up by dumping a bucket of water on his head. Then she professes her love. Disney decided to up the drama in their version of this scene. The Beast's castle is stormed by villagers from Belle's hometown, and the furniture has to fend them off. The one real threat, Gaston, makes it through though, and ends up stabbing the Beast before falling to his own death like an idiot. Disney really loves dramatic falls to the death, don't they? Weirdly though, the book's Beast doesn't immediately transform back into a prince after Belle saves him like he does in the movie. Instead, he tells Beauty he loves her too, and then she helps him get into bed and sleep. It's not until dinner the following evening that their happily ever after begins to take shape. After they eat, he asks her the same question as always: will you be my wife? And this time, she says yes.
Aw.
That night, they fall asleep in the same room, her in the bed and him on the couch. And when she wakes up the next morning, the Beast is nowhere to be found. Sleeping in his place on the couch was the handsome prince of her dreams, and she
Ooh.
realizes they were one and the same all along.
Oh gosh. Jeez. Birth of the Beast.
Act
Okay, that
3
was
is
a-
where the
that was a
original
jump
story
scare.
distinguishes itself from every other version because we're told the entire backstory behind how the beast was cursed and why Beauty is not a lowly merchant's daughter after all. Unlike the movie, this story doesn't unfold in a quick 2-minute breakdown either. It's a 69-page story.
Wow,
Nice. That's 42%
69.
of the book. With that in mind, I'm going to do my best to keep this as simple as possible because I do have some other stories I want to mention before we run out of time. So firstly, on the morning of Beast's transformation back to a prince, Beauty is visited by 2 women. First is the lady from her dreams, who reveals herself to be a fairy, and the second is the prince's mother, who throws herself at the feet of Beauty in gratitude for saving
Wow.
her son. Things take a weird turn when the queen finds out that Beauty isn't of royal blood, though. She says that while she's
course.
grateful for the help, her son can't marry someone with such a pathetically low social status. The
Of
good
course.
fairy actually gets kind of pissed about this and shames the queen for being so cruel. But then she drops another bomb. Beauty is actually of royal blood because she's the prince's cousin.
What?
And somehow that's a good thing. Might I add that she's
Wait,
not
she's-
even a cousin. Bomb. Beauty is actually of royal blood because she's the prince's cousin. And somehow that's a good thing. Might I add that
They're
she's
your
not even a
cousins.
distant cousin either. Beauty's father is the brother of the prince's mother. So they're first cousins. But let's talk about the curse for a minute. In the movie, the prince is transformed.
Wait, what? They are cousins? They are first cousins? They are cousins. They were from a rich family. They lost everything. And the father didn't think about reaching out to his brother. And they are first cousins. They're first cousins. That's messed up. Leon, long time no see. Indeed. How are you? How have you been? And the chat is actually pretty low. How have you been? I'm reacting to messed up origins of Disney movies. I'm very good. I'm glad. I'm glad. That's good. That's good. That's good. I have been okay. It's been a roller coaster. Life has been a roller coaster for me, but I'm okay. And that's what matters. But yeah, and now we are processing the fact that on one of the original stories of Beauty and the Beast, they are first cousins. Yeah. Um, I'm still processing that. I thought the queen was gonna be okay with the relationship after finding out that Beauty is actually from a rich family. But to think that she is their first cousin. Ugh. No, okay, so what's going on? I mean, it's just explaining where the original story of Beauty and the Beast, and so far there have been like 2 stories, both from French authors that I obviously don't remember the names, but Belle has 5 sisters, and how many brothers has it? 6 brothers, something like that. And the sisters are jealous of her because of her beauty and hate her. The brothers love her. And they are from a rich family, but they lost everything after their house and a boat they owned that had like many things burned down. So they end up being poor, I guess. And then what we know, Belle replaced her father when with the Beast. What else? What else? Oh yeah, on the book, the Beast looks like an elephant, and the Beast dies. The Beast dies, and he comes back to life after Belle splashes his face with a with a bucket of water. Yeah, and the prince, he has a mother that apparently never visited until he came back to being a human, a prince, human prince, and refused, or well, she was grateful to Belle, but she didn't accept her because she was not from royal blood until they dropped the bomb that they are actually first cousins. So since that means that Belle is from royal blood, that it's okay for them to be together. That's what's happening. Still not enough to ruin my childhood, though. I'm trying to see if there is something that can ruin my childhood. Pretty much a whole other story than the movies. Yeah. Very different. This is from the 17th century or something. I don't remember. Something like that. Very different. Definitely not for children. Let's continue. Oh, isn't? Hello? Oh, there we
After
go.
he rejects the gift of a rose from an old beggar woman, and after she tells him that appearances can be deceiving, she reveals her beautiful form as a young enchantress and curses him to remain a beast until he can learn how to love and be loved back. And the rose becomes his timer, as on his 21st birthday, the last petal will fall and he'll remain a beast forever. This is almost nothing like Villanueva's version, but it strongly resembles a variant of the folktale from southern France collected by Henry Pouat, where basically the exact same thing happens. Villanueva makes it so much more complicated though. I'm gonna make this as simple as possible. The prince's father died before he was born, and his mother left him in the care of his fairy godmother while she went off to fight a war. That war took about 15 years longer than expected, so the prince was basically raised to young adulthood by his godmother.
You see, that's the kind of prince I wanted to see on the movie when I was a kid. That's the kind of prince I was hoping for. Not what we got.
And grew to love her like a grandma. When the war finally ended and the queen returned home, the godmother made a bizarre request though. She wanted to marry the prince, which both he and the queen found disgusting for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
For one, the fairy, who I'm gonna call the evil fairy, was like a grandmother to him, as I previously said. Secondly, they had an age difference that was impossible to ignore.
Like
she was
50?
well over 1,000 years old, and he was still a teenager. The third reason, though, is downright hilarious. When the evil fairy becomes furious that some lowly mortals would reject a powerful supernatural being such as herself, she demands an explanation, and the queen literally responds, "If you want to know so bad, just look in the mirror."
You're mean.
Villanueva makes it very clear that the evil fairy is butt ugly and...
That's good. Look in the mirror. You will find the answer of why you are not allowed to marry my son. Oh, shit. Oh. If someone said that to me and I had powers, I would curse him too. Damn, the queen was... That was a good response. That did hit... Indeed, it hit hard. Yeah. What the heck? I don't know, Lee. I don't know what to tell you. You know, or messed up origins of children movies.
Always has been. She even goes so far as to clarify that it's not just an issue of her extremely old age, and that the fairy wasn't even hot when she was younger.
They're literally telling her that she has always been ugly. Uh, and that she's also too old to marry. I mean, obviously, that's understandable. But they are mean. What did I walk into? You walked into I don't know, a messed up family situation, you know? A grandma that wants to marry her, well, not even grandma, like I guess an old woman that's considered a grandma wants to marry the prince who's a teenager. Yes, that's what you walked into.
Naturally hideous is the phrase she uses to describe her.
Hideous! Ah!
The fairy then concludes that the prince's good looks are to blame, not her being a geriatric uggo, and curses him to transform into a hideous monster who is as dumb as he is ugly. But since all curses need a way to be broken, she adds the caveat that he can only be saved by a beautiful maiden's act of true love. She also adds a bunch of qualifiers, like the maiden has to willingly get to know and love him, and that if anyone finds out his true identity as a prince, he'll be trapped as a beast forever. This way he can't find help or be cured by another fairy. After the evil fairy left, both the prince and the queen were moments away from taking their own lives. But lucky for them, the good fairy had been watching over them and showed up to help in the nick of time. Well, the nick of time would have actually been before the prince was cursed, but the evil fairy was a lot more powerful than the good fairy, so she had to wait until the damage was done before she could intervene and try to find a solution.
Did you pull for anyone engaged? Nope, I didn't. There are only female characters, and you know I'm a simp for male characters. I'm saving up for the next male character. If it's good enough, though. If it's good. No, I didn't pull for Citlali or whatever, and Arlecchino. You want 250 feet? Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. No. I never win those 50-50. Don't. Nope.
She first transformed all of the servants into stone statues so they wouldn't be able to tell anyone about his condition, so drawing kind of a parallel to the servants being cursed in the movie, and then she summoned several more servants in the form of genies to keep him entertained and take care of him while he waited for his true love to arrive.
So the monkeys are the genies? Okay. I'm gonna double on her. Now you're just bragging, Lee. It hurts, you know? It hurts. I've never won a 50-50.
Things only get more complicated from here, though, because Beauty's origin story is somehow more elaborate than the prince's. Remember how I said she's actually a princess? Well, her birth father was the king of a place called Fortunate Island, and her mother was a fairy. Actually the sister of the good fairy who was helping the prince. But the thing is, not even the king knew about the secret fairy identity of his wife. And after Beauty was born, the evil fairy ratted on her for starting a family with mortals, something that was forbidden in the fairy kingdom until they reached a certain age. As a result, Mama Fairy was thrown in fairy jail, and just to put salt in her wounds, one particularly bitchy fairy, who has no role in the story besides this, threw a curse on Beauty, dooming her to marry a horrible beast. Meanwhile, the king never saw his wife again, because when he got home from his hunting trip, the servants reported that she passed away from a mysterious illness while he was gone. In other words, they lied because they were too scared to say, "Sorry, Your Majesty, your wife wandered off and we kinda sorta lost her." And you want to...
Belly's a fairy? Belly's a fairy? It means that Belly's half human, half fairy then. What are her powers then? I mean, I want to know her powers. She must have powers, right?
Here's something really messed up. After the evil fairy got Beauty's mother locked up, she tried to swoop in and take the king for herself.
Damn.
I know, she was thirsty for that royal lovin'. This was before she tried to marry the prince, though. He was actually her backup for the king. In order to get on the king's good side, she watched over his infant daughter. And similar to how the prince's mother did, he named her the primary protector and caregiver and trusted her with his daughter's life. Which, if you've been paying attention, you'll know was a bad idea. Because whenever the evil fairy made a pass at the king, he rejected her outright. And after this happened a few too many times, the evil fairy concluded that he must be clinging to his old life, and the only way to get him over it would be to destroy it. She hatched a scheme to hire some random couple from their kingdom to take the baby out in the woods and smother her. And that they did. Or at least they tried to. Once again, the good fairy showed up to save the day. This time in the form of a bear.
What?
She tore the would-be baby killers limb from limb, soaked the baby beauty's clothes in their blood so it would look like she was killed as well. Then she resolved to find a safe place to raise her where the evil fairy would never find her. As luck would have
This
it,
is too
she
much for
stumbled
my
upon
brain.
a cabin in the forest with 3 nurses taking care of a sick baby. She learned this baby was a daughter of a wealthy
Like this
merchant,
Sleeping
and
Beauty
she had
and
been
the
on death's door
Sleeping
since she was
Beauty.
born. When that poor baby tragically passed away, the good fairy saw an opportunity. While the nurses were sleeping, she took her out of the crib and replaced her with baby Beauty. Then she buried her tiny little corpse and left Beauty to be raised by the merchant that appeared to have the means to support her. When the nurses woke up, they thought the merchant's daughter had a miraculous recovery and were delighted to bring her home. Meanwhile, the good fairy continued to check in on her niece to make sure that she was well taken care of. Now, as I said previously, this whole subplot actually went down before the prince was cursed. So when that happened, as horrible as it was, the good fairy knew that a solution was on the horizon.
I was wrong. The father, the adoptive father at this point, I guess, it's not brother of the king. Okay, I see. Okay, now I see. It's a little bit more complicated. Okay.
The only way to save the prince was for a beautiful maiden to fall in love with him, and it just so happened her niece was a beautiful maiden cursed to fall in love with a beast. Ipso facto, as long as the good fairy could gently nudge Beauty in the right direction, both of them would be saved from their horrible fates. And as you've just heard, that's exactly what happened. Thanks to Beauty, the prince was restored to his human form, and thanks to the prince, the beast that Beauty fell in love with wouldn't stay a beast for long. I should also mention that when the beast confronted the merchant over the roses, he was putting on a performance. He didn't give a about those roses, but the good fairy told him about Beauty's request for one, so he knew that he could exploit this to get her to his palace. Even better, word quickly passed to Beauty's birth father that his daughter, whom he had spent decades thinking was eaten by a bear, was actually alive. And it just so happened that her mother was released from her fairy prison that very same day after doing a favor for one of the fairy elders. 2 broken families had been made whole again, and while the merchant was super bummed that Beauty wasn't his biological daughter, not to mention that his own daughter really did die all those years ago, his pain was lessened by the fact that Beauty would continue calling him father, and that she gave him and all of her siblings positions in her royal court.
Yeah, I wouldn't give shit to the sisters. Like, bro, they are mean. I was trying to look for your Genshin stream, but found the little. The Genshin streams are on my VOD channel on YouTube. But there is actually no. The only clip I have of Genshin on my Twitch, maybe it has expired. I don't know. It was of me getting Kinich. But yeah. Genshin is on my YouTube, all the VODs. I was gonna stream it today, but my throat hurts way too much. I have, yeah, I know. You don't have to remind me that. 7 months ago. Oh, that's a long time ago. Damn.
Hooray for nepotism! Oh, but we can't forget about the villains. So you might remember from my original Beauty and the Beast video from years ago that in Beaumont's version, Beauty's sisters would get punished by her fairy godmother. They were cursed to become statues that would forever stand guard over the castle until they could learn to be happy for their sister. Unfortunately, they get a free pass in this version, but in their defense,
Why?
they didn't try to get Beauty killed like in Beaumont's story. Instead, it's the evil fairy who's punished. She's thrown in the same fairy jail that Beauty's mother spent all those years in, but her sentence was indefinite and hopefully lasted for eternity.
Nice.
Besides that, everyone involved in the tale lives happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
Now that may be the end of this story, and it's
I still internally facepalm every time I watch it. Thank you. Mm-hmm. I do too. I honestly try not to watch it. Okay.
It's about damn time, but the origins of this one aren't over. I want to tell you about an ancient Greek myth written 1600 years earlier that
What?
contains a shocking number of similarities.
A tale as old as time.
So for those who are new to the worlds of folklore and mythology, you should know that folklore experts use a special tool to organize stories by the archetypes and motifs they have in common. It's called the Arne Thompson Uther Tale Type Index, and there are over
Okay.
1,000 categories and subcategories in total.
What? Animal helpers for the search for a sensitive wife, abandoned children. Huh? What is this?
Appropriately, Villanueva's story, as well as Beaumont's and Disney's, falls under Tale Type 425C, Beauty and the Beast, but they aren't the only ones. Similar tales have been found in England, Germany, Denmark, Austria, Switzerland,
Wow.
Italy, Russia, China, and even America. And while I'd love to cover every single one of those, I'm going to leapfrog to the oldest one in existence, the ancient myth of Cupid and Psyche. Now, to be fair, I don't know
Oh?
if this story would technically be considered 425C because Cupid is a handsome hunk of a god, but the story shares some oddly specific similarities, to the point where I've got to imagine Villanueva used it as inspiration. Just to give you some context, the story
I'm going to do that if I find a turret in the company while holding that specific piece of scrap. Yeah, do that. It works once, not twice. Just remember that. Okay. Also, please don't say I had protection on. I didn't think about the what could be the different meanings behind that sentence. Until a friend told me. It's so bad, so bad.
written in 2nd century Rome by Lucius Apuleius, follows a mortal woman named Psyche who is so beautiful that mankind starts worshipping her as the second coming of Aphrodite, and their praise of her gets so intense they actually start neglecting their temples to Aphrodite and cease to make sacrifices to her entirely. Naturally, Aphrodite doesn't like this, so she orders her son Cupid to shoot Psyche with an arrow that will cause her to fall in love with the ugliest, meanest, poorest, most vile man on the planet. In other
Jeez.
words, a beast. This all backfires though when Cupid accidentally nicks himself with the arrow and immediately falls madly in love with Psyche. What happens next mirrors the fate of Beauty almost
Nice.
exactly. Psyche is whisked away to a magnificent palace full of invisible servants and all the treasures she could possibly want, and every night, Cupid visits her. Only she doesn't actually get to see what he looks like. Their meetings always take place in the bedroom, which is in complete darkness. They make love, and in the morning,
Damn.
Cupid leaves. He also makes a point during every visit to say that she can never see his
Still got what could go wrong with walking towards a turret with a piece of scrap? You got. Stop it with the protection! Also, in my defense, it did work once, okay? It did work once. Just not twice.
his face and to ignore any temptation to sneak a peek. Which reminds me of how the Beast had to conceal his royal identity from Beauty, and how the good fairy often reminded her that appearances can be deceiving. Only in this case, I'm almost certain it's because Cupid is trying to hide his relationship from his mother and the other gods who know that Psyche is on Aphrodite's shite list. I mean, smite list. Now, Psyche is pretty certain that her mysterious man is a god and spectacularly good looking, judging by the soft touch of his skin and cinnamon-scented hair. Seriously, those are details that can actually be found in the text, but on the occasions that her jealous sisters visit, they plant seeds of doubt in her mind. Knowing full well that she hasn't seen her lover yet, they capitalize on that insecurity and warn her that he's actually a venomous dragon, and that if she doesn't kill him soon, he'll surely devour her. They tell her that during his next nighttime visit, she needs to slit his throat with a razor, then seek shelter at home.
Holy.
Of course, they're only saying this in the hope that it backfires, but she believes them nonetheless and follows their advice. Now, her sisters were right to expect this plan to go wrong, but it didn't happen the way they predicted. Psyche had used a lantern to get a good look at her lover and aim the razor true, and for the first time ever, she saw his face, which just so happened to be smoking hot. While she stood there, razor in one hand, lantern in the other, not knowing how to proceed, some hot oil spilled onto Cupid and woke him up with a start. As you can imagine, he was horrified and furious to see Psyche not only betraying his trust, but in the process of trying to kill him. So he abandoned her then and there, vowing to never see her again. At this point, the story departs significantly from the Beauty and the Beast tale we just talked about, and actually resembles folk tales about Baba Yaga and other witches.
Who's Baba Yaga? I've heard the name before, but I don't know who that is. I need to get back into V2, especially Lethal Collapse, so I can do that specifically. Well, I'm glad my dumb phrases inspire you. Jesus.
With Aphrodite fulfilling the role of the witches.
Shaking my
In
head.
order to gain forgiveness, Psyche is forced to do some humiliating and borderline impossible tasks that nearly kill her. But in the end, Cupid returns to save his true love and convinces Zeus to absolve her from Aphrodite's fury. Then the two get married and live happily ever after. If you want to hear that story in its entirety, because I left out a lot of juicy details, you can check out my episode
I don't know.
called The
I don't
Messed Up
know.
Origins of Cupid. As for this episode, I
If
think
it's
that'll
juicy,
do
I
it for
don't
the
think so.
messed up origins of Beauty and the Beast. I know, I've got to stop adding filler to get to that 10-minute mark. But I do hope you enjoyed today's stories and
Alright,
learned
that
something in the
was,
process. Or at the
Beauty
very
and the
least, I hope I
Beast.
saved you some time on that book report you had to write. If you did find this entertaining and informative, do me a solid and sacrifice those like and subscribe buttons.
That was Beauty and the Beast. It was indeed messed up. Like, holy shit, they are family. And they are allowed to get married. Alright, you know what? It's just a story. It's a book. Very old book. The movies we know, they don't have that. They are complete strangers. They don't know each other until Belle comes to their castle. They are not family, not related, so it's fine. But damn, it was indeed a bit messed up, the original stories. Okay. Now, the messed up origins of Swan Princess. Why? Because I love this movie as well. It's as I said at the beginning, it's a 2-part story, so maybe we'll end up only watching these 2 stories and leave The Princess and the Frog for next time. But for now, let's start with Swan Princess.
What is going on, mere mortals? My name is John Solo, and if you grew up watching Swan Princess, Barbie of Swan Lake, or Black Swan, then I would recommend closing out of this video now, because
Why?
chances are you're going to be traumatized by what it
Oh.
contains.
That's
Well,
what
if you
I'm
grew up
here
watching
for.
Black Swan,
I'm
then you're
here for
probably
trauma.
already traumatized, so you're fine to stick around. But I stand by what I said for the other 2 movies. If you have any core memories
I'm gonna react to the I got protection clip soon on stream. Oh my god, you know what? Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want, Lee.
associated with them that you don't want me to corrupt, you might be better off watching another video of mine. Just a heads up though, pretty much all of my content is childhood ruining in one way or another. Now, while those movies may have taught you that there is such a thing as true love and
There
that
is
dreams
nothing
do come
such
true,
thing as
the
true
ballet
love.
they were based on, Swan Lake, tells a tale that's quite
Oh,
a bit
what the
darker. A
fuck?
tale where the only dreams that come
We're gonna talk about the ballet? Oh, interesting.
true are nightmares and where evil triumphs over good. That is, depending on the version. Each
Oh.
director likes to add their own artistic influence on the story, and
Oh,
there has been
okay.
a lot of directors, which means there's been a lot of endings. Some were happy, some weren't. In this episode, we're going to focus on the original, not so happy ending. Now, you may have already
Hey.
noticed there's a part 1 in this episode's title. That's because the origins of the Swan Maiden go deeper than the Swan Lake Ballet. The ballet storyline is an original work that wasn't based on a single myth or fairy tale, but certain elements of its plot do show up in stories that we've been
Majestic.
telling each other since the ancient days. Evil doppelgangers, monstrous animal hybrids, even the Swan Maiden herself. In this episode, we're going to focus on the ballet story and the many spin-offs it inspired, and in part 2, which is coming on January 12th, we'll dive into the folklore and mythology that Pyotr Tchaikovsky borrowed from when he composed the ballet in 1877. Be sure to
Tchaikovsky.
subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss part 2's premiere, but now it's time to dive into the messed up origins of Swan Lake.
I love the song.
So I just want to
Act
reiterate
one.
that for the sake of my own sanity, we're focusing on 3 relatively modern adaptations: Barbie of Swan Lake,
Yeah.
Swan Princess,
Yeah.
and Black Swan.
haven't
As
watched
far
that
as the
one.
ballet is concerned, we're going with the original tragic plotline, though we may briefly touch on a few others because I actually watched the wrong performance in preparation for this episode, and I don't want the 140 minutes I spent watching ballet to have been for nothing. Yeah, I counted all the minutes. That's how much fun I was having. So the Swan Lake Ballet begins on a special occasion, Prince Siegfried's 21st birthday. The man of the hour is having a blast twirling around with his party guests, but his mother ruins the fun when she tells the no longer young royal that he needs to settle down and find a woman to spend the rest of his life with.
Of
The prince
course.
doesn't want to do that though. Right now, he's the equivalent of Pinocchio at Pleasure Island. He isn't ready to become a real boy and shoulder the responsibility that comes with. So, like the puppet he is, he runs away from his problems and takes the crossbow his mother gave him as a birthday present into the woods to blow off some steam. Right away, there are a ton of similarities with the Swan Princess movie, although the setup is very different. In The Swan Princess, the story opens by introducing the audience to the prince, whose name has been changed to Derek, terrible choice, and Princess Odette. Derek's mother and Odette's father arrange for the two to be married when they come of
I
age,
might
but
watch this
Derek
movie
mucks
after
everything
stream as
up
well.
when he can't name
I
a
might
single
rewatch
thing
it.
he likes about Odette besides her hot bod. Like I said, very
Dang,
different
that's
setup.
bad.
The message portrayed is the same. Derek has some growing up to do. I've been saying that for years, by the way. Derek is the worst. The prince's story in the Barbie movie also has a similar theme, but he's named Daniel and doesn't come across as quite so immature. He just wants to live a little more and go on an adventure or two before settling down and having kids. But his mom is weirdly fixated on
God.
him giving her grandbaby.
The visuals, the old graphics. I mean, honestly, I wish I would bring back the old Barbie, because it's so iconic. You know, it brings back memories. It's so unique now. It's pretty old fashioned now. No, I think every single 3D movie back then was like that. But I really like the old Barbie, especially the looks of Barbie.
Babies. Black Swan is where the similarities get really interesting though. It's definitely not a direct adaptation of the Swan Lake story, but I would argue that the main character Nina's internal struggle with stepping up to be the new lead resembles the prince's conundrum. She's the perfect white swan, but in order to play the black swan, she had to tap into a darker, more
Oh,
chaotic
wow.
part of her psyche that she wasn't prepared to handle, probably because of how she was coddled her whole life.
Act 2.
At the start of the ballet's second act, the prince finds himself alone at a lake deep in the forest, and he spots an astonishingly beautiful swan miraculously turn into a pretty young thing named Odette. She tells the prince about the evil sorcerer Baron von Rothbart, who's cursed her and about 40 other broads to become swans during the day, and only at night, by the side of the enchanted lake created from the tears of Odette's mother, do they return to human form. She also tells him the only way the spell can be broken is if a man who has never loved before vows his undying love to her. The prince, who's clearly thinking with his little prince, is ready to make a vow right then and there. But the evil Von Rothbart interrupts this love fest and takes her away. Now I've gotta say that Von Rothbart in the ballet is a confusing villain
His
and a
little
pretty
prince,
lame
huh?
one. He turns all of these women into swans, but we never find out what his motivation for doing that is. And you'd think there'd have to be one because that's a really specific curse. This is where the adaptations compensate for the original's minimal narrative. Both the Barbie version and the Swan Princess give him a backstory and an ultimate goal. In the Barbie movie, Rothbart is pissed about not being chosen as the forest's next king and is determined to take it over by force.
This is my forest. Mine. Just as it always should have been.
When Odette finds the magic crystal and becomes the chosen one to defeat Rothbart, he turns her into a swan, because apparently turning his enemies into woodland creatures is sort of his thing. In Swan Princess, Rothbart is mad that he got busted trying to usurp the throne and wants revenge on Odette's father for exiling him. So he ambushes their caravan in the form of a monster called the Great Animal and takes Odette to Swan Lake, where he curses her out of frustration that she won't accept his marriage proposal and make him the new king. Both plans are pretty straightforward and make sense if you don't think about them too hard, but the original Rothbart's plan can't even hold its own against surface-level scrutiny. It makes even less sense when you watch the original ending, but we'll get to that. Another story element that the adaptations find creative ways to incorporate
The difference of the how they're holding the bow. I guess it was harder for 3D to make it accurate, I guess. It's interesting. It's kind of funny.
is the prince's crossbow. Both change it to a bow and arrow, and in both versions, he almost kills Odette with it. In the Swan Princess, he only misses because the puffin pushed her out of the arrow's path. But in Barbie, the prince lowers his bow because he's awestruck by the swan's beauty. And with stunning animation like that, who wouldn't be? Well, just like in the ballet, this close call leads to the princes discovering the Swan Maiden, learning all about Rothbart's evil deeds, as well as the cure for their curse, a pledge of true love. Only in the Swan Princess, the pledge has the added requirement of being proven to the world. Otherwise, he could just pledge it right then and there, and the movie would be over.
You must make a vow of everlasting love.
I make it.
Life never makes it easy, though, and there are still plenty of obstacles that these lovebirds are gonna have to overcome. Well, I guess it's just one lovebird, the swan. Before we get into Act 3, though, I want to tell you all about today's sponsor.
We don't. Act 3. Haha.
The ballet's third act begins one day after Siegfried meets the princess. His mom is hosting another grand celebration where she invited all of the eligible princesses so he can choose one to marry. But Derek's heart is set on Odette and he refuses. That is, until Odette herself walks into the gathering. The prince twirls around with her for what feels like 50 years, then declares his love for her. But that is when the truth is revealed. The woman he thought was Odette was really Rothbart's daughter, Odile, in disguise. The prince had pledged himself to the wrong woman, and because he was apparently Odette's last hope at finding a lover, she and her friends would be cursed to stay in their swan forms forever, or until a hunter takes them out. Both of the animated adaptations have their own versions of this ballroom scene. In the Barbie version, Odile wears a magic necklace that causes the prince to see her as Odette, and when he says he loves her, the real Odette faints and her magic crystal loses its power, allowing Rothbart to steal it. In Swan Princess, Rothbart doesn't have a daughter. Instead, a weird old lady is his sidekick. Her name is Bridget, I guess, and Rothbart disguises her as Odette, and the prince mistakenly vows to love her, resulting in Odette's apparent death. full disclosure, I don't totally understand why Prince Siegfried, Derek, or Daniel vowing to love the false Odette would have any impact on the real one. He thinks that she is the real one. It's not like he said the wrong name. He didn't say, take thee Rachel. I mean, technically in the ballet, he didn't say anything because ballets don't have dialogue, but in the Swan Princess, he specifically names Odette, a fact that he calls out later.
The vow I made was for her!
Oh, what a
I
voice
feel like the
acting.
writers put that in there as their way of saying, we know this technically doesn't make sense. Just roll with it. The ballet's
Act
fourth
4,
act
the
is
grand
also its
finale.
grand finale, and where the Duel of the Fates takes place. Odette's fate, that is. Siegfried is able to reach her in time to explain the mix-up at the ball, and Odette forgives him, but the damage has already been done. She's cursed to remain a swan forever. Except, here's the deal, kids, she really doesn't want to do that. Refusing to accept this miserable fate, she takes her destiny into her own talons, yeets herself off a cliff, and instead of flapping her wings, she allows herself to
Oh,
plummet into the
shit.
water and rocks below. Then Siegfried jumps in too,
Oh.
because he's a copycat, and he also dies. Just imagine if
frick.
the animated version you watched as a kid had this ending. How different would your childhood have been? No, I'm sorry to say that the prince and
True.
princess do
I would be
not get their
crying.
happily ever after here on the mortal plane. But evidently, Siegfried's act of true love was so powerful that it broke Rothbart's curse. The 40-something other women he transfigured were turned human again, and the broken curse causes him to die. I
Nice.
guess. Again, I don't really get what's happening here. I'm assuming his life force was somehow connected to how many swan babes he could make. Oh, and look, Odette and Siegfried are dancing together in the heavens. That's kind of nice. So that was the ballet's original ending, but there have been many more since the OG Pyotr Tchaikovsky composition premiered in Moscow in 1877. One variant that was choreographed in 1969 ends with a duel between the prince and the sorcerer where Siegfried rips off Rothbart's wing, which kills him and frees the cursed maidens. The version I mistakenly watched took an even artsier approach. Parts of the story only took place in the prince's dream, including his encounters with Odette. When he realizes this truth, he loses his mind and apparently dies of a broken heart, or from Palpatine draining his life force. I couldn't really tell what was going on there without any dialogue, so that's my assumption. That ending in particular reminds me of the ending of Black Swan, which I really don't want to spoil the details of, but simply put, the protagonist Nina is mentally broken just like this prince was. Now I've got to say that I'm pretty impressed with how the Swan Princess and Barbie were able to incorporate both the sad and happy endings into their conclusions. In the Swan Princess, Rothbart and Derek have a pretty epic fight where Rothbart takes
Yeah,
on his
a battle that
secondary
lasts
form
for
as
like
the
2
great
minutes.
animal, a wolf, bat, eagle, lizard hybrid. This great animal was inspired by Rothbart's appearance in the ballet, which usually resembles an owl-type creature, except when he's a demon, of course. In Barbie, they chose to make him and his daughter ugly vulture-looking things. Back to Swan Princess, in one of the smoothest finishing moves in animated history, Derek's friend, Bromley, who's known as Benno in the ballet, shoots an
Benno.
arrow at him. Then Derek snatches the arrow out of the air and reroutes it directly into Rothbart's heart, killing the sorcerer and breaking his curse forever. This allows Odette to come back to life in her beautiful human form, and she and Derek get married, even though nothing has really changed since his original proposal at the start of the movie. I mean, yeah, he saved her life, and that definitely counts for something, but if she asked him another time what he likes about her besides her looks, what would he say? I like that you're not a swan anymore? He's learned exactly 0 new things about her from this adventure. I digress. I don't want to hate on the cherished happy ending from your childhood, even if it is built on lies. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the ending of the Barbie adaptation makes slightly more sense. Admittedly, Odette wakes up from what was supposed to be her death for seemingly no reason at all, but I'll give this a pass because the prince's vow of love was really for her, even if he directed it towards the wrong woman, meaning she really shouldn't have been hurt in the first place. But when Rothbart sends a powerful blast of evil magic towards the couple, both Odette and the prince try to protect each other from it, and as a result, they're both hit by it. Initially, Rothbart thinks that he's finally succeeded in taking over the forest, but this act of true love not only saved their lives, it gave the crystal its power back, and
Power
Rothbart
of
is
love.
consumed by its magic. Like I said, slightly
look
more
up.
sense. I still think it's a stretch, but no more than the original ballet was. Well, after Rothbart's defeat, Odette and Daniel go on to have a lovely wedding ceremony in the Enchanted Forest. Meanwhile, Rothbart's daughter is stuck working as a maid. Oh, and Rothbart himself was turned into a cuckoo clock. A fitting ending
I
for a guy
forgot
who liked to
about that
transform
part.
people into animals, I must say. So those are just a few of the many stories Swan Lake has inspired since it first debuted about 150 years ago. Now the question
Holy.
remains, what stories inspired Swan Lake? That's what we'll be discussing in part 2, which you can expect in January. I would have loved to give you the whole spiel in a single episode, but splitting it into 2 parts means I can give you all the juicy details instead of glossing over the good stuff for the sake of time. So mark January 12th on your calendars and be sure to subscribe,
I
because you
think
don't
that
want to
was
miss
like
what's coming next
2
week
years ago.
either. Our biggest,
Yeah, 2 years.
priciest episode of Featured Folklore is in the final stages of development, and I cannot wait for you to see what we've been working on since August. Neither can our shining star, Hephaestus. I just
What?
love the design for this guy. He's so ugly cute, kind of like Gunther. Are you ugly cute like Hephaestus?
Cute.
Thank you
I
all for
don't like
tuning into
dogs, but
this
he's
episode of
cute.
Messed Up Origins, the final Messed Up Origins of 2022. It's been an absolute roller coaster of a year, and you and I have a lot to catch up on, but we'll wait until the New Year's update for that conversation. In
Okay.
the meantime, I hope you have a
Okay, yeah. You two have a lovely day, John Solo. We're gonna watch the second part. Alright, let's go.
is going on, mere mortals? My name is John Solo, and welcome to the first Messed
I can't remember anything my teachers teach me, but I can remember when someone owes me something. Don't we all? Don't we all? You know, I think we remember what we want to remember, you know? We choose what to remember. Or well, the brain decides, you know?
Up Origins episode of 2023. It's a brand new year, which means there's no better time than now to get a fresh start. The only catch is, before I can start fresh, I've got to finish something I started last year. You see, a few weeks ago, I dove deep into the messed up origins of the Swan Princess, Barbie of Swan Lake, and the Black Swan, and I broke down in detail how each of their plots were inspired by the world-famous Swan Lake Ballet. As deep of a dive as that was, though, we only made it about halfway down the
That
rabbit
was
hole.
halfway,
I may have
yeah.
shown you how particular moments and elements of these films' plots were inspired by the ballet, but what I failed to answer was, where did the ballet story come from? And the reason I failed to answer is because it's complicated. We know the music was composed by Pyotr Tchaikovsky, so it's likely that he had some influence over the plot, but we'll never know who first proposed the idea for the story or who wrote the original libretto. For my fellow ballet novices, the libretto was the accompanying booklet where the ballet story was spelled out for the audience so they could
I remember seeing the FNAF VHS stream thumbnail month later. Oh my god, yeah, the Five Nights at Freddy's VHS. That was something. I don't remember much about the videos, but yeah. It was fun. I remember it was fun. I remember I was scared. Sometimes I was scared, yeah.
could actually tell what was going on. Most people assume the plot came from a fairy tale, but which fairy tale features a spoiled prince who falls in love with a cursed swan maiden who yeets herself off a cliff and inspires him to yeet himself off a cliff? Well, after weeks of research conducted
I feel like the part in a story where lovers decide to jump off a cliff together because they love each other. I guess that's something that's been around for like many years. I guess like 100 and something years. But I wonder why. Who decided to make that a thing? And I feel like I see a lot of those endings in many things, many movies, many series. Yeah.
directed by myself and the Messed Up Origins team, I can confidently tell you,
Mangas
none
as
of them.
well.
That being said, stories about swan maidens have been found all over the world, and while they don't all mirror the ballet's plot perfectly, they have enough in common to make you wonder if there's a connection. So in this episode, I'm going to share some of the stories that experts think may have influenced Swan Lake, analyze the tragic lives that swan maidens
I miss coloring with people, especially if it's very specific. If it's a very specific pumpkin queen, because you can see a lot of them yet. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I say a lot of dumb stuff because I never. Yes, you know me. I never think before saying stuff. I don't remember how to ban people. Was it slash ban? Yeah. Ban away. There we go. Done. No bots. I continue.
maidens tend to live in these tales, and discuss the surprising differences that occur when men are turned into swans instead of women. Can you see why this was too complicated for part 1?
Inspiration.
One of the most popular theories regarding the origins of Swan Lake link it to a German fairy tale called The Stolen Veil. Before I
German.
get into that, though, you should know that the original 1877 Swan Lake Ballet was very different than the one that's performed today. Originally, Odette was the daughter of a good fairy and a knight in shining armor.
Another
And instead
fairy.
of her and her friends being cursed by von Rothbart, they were cursed by her stepmother, who's an evil sorceress that wants to kill her. In this version, von Rothbart's reduced to being the stepmother's sidekick. Odette is protected from her stepmother's magic thanks to a magical crown that her grandfather gave her, a detail that Barbie of Swan Lake even managed to incorporate, and the only way to break the curse is a vow of marriage. Prince Siegfried goes on to meet Odette by the Enchanted Lake, falls in love with her in a span of about 4.5 minutes, and tells her to come to the ball his
4.5.
mother is hosting tomorrow so he can
Damn.
make his vow of marriage. But the
Imagine
demon
falling in love that fast. 4.5 minutes. Imagine. That would not end up in a good and happy ending.
Von Rothbart tricks the prince into swearing himself to the wrong woman by disguising his own daughter to look like Odette. Unlike the later versions, Odette doesn't forgive Siegfried for his betrayal and dies of grief in his arms. The heartbroken
Ooh.
prince then throws the dead
Damn.
Odette's crown into the lake and sits there holding her body while the lake's water engulfs them both. Yeah, I thought the
Oh.
version I shared with you guys in part 1 was pretty dark, but this one is straight up depressing. I really wish I knew about it a few weeks ago so I could have included it in part 1, but I've seen so many different performances of this damn ballet labeled as the original that I guess I just got confused. It's a bit embarrassing, honestly, but the good news is that the following theory was suggested by someone a lot smarter than me. Soviet historian Yuri Slonimsky claimed the libretto was inspired by the German fairy tale The Stolen Veil, written by Johann Carl August Musaeus about 100 years before the ballet. It follows a
Wow.
soldier named Friedbert and a hermit named Benno, whose names are oddly similar to Prince Siegfried and his friend Benno, as they fall in love with not one but 2 swan maidens who transform into humans at night. These swan maidens wear veils, similar to how Odette wears a crown. They live on a body of water called Swan Pond, and at one point the maiden leaves Friedbert after discovering he betrayed her, just like how
Oh,
originally
no.
Odette refused to forgive
Get an artifact with cracked substats, but the feminist that very such. Dude, I never understood the artifacts. I don't know what's good and what's bad. And my throat is hurting. I'm gonna take. I have here my precious and beautiful and very useful and effective medicine for a throat that I used to eat as a snack at school. Do not do this at home. Don't do this. Not a good idea.
Siegfried for his betrayal. Only in this story, that betrayal did not entail pledging himself to her doppelganger. Instead, he stole and hid her magical veil that gave her the power to turn to a swan. Hence the
no.
name of the story. It's clearly not an exact match to Swan Lake's plot, which is why experts remain pretty skeptical about its influence, but there's enough overlap that you can't help wondering if whoever wrote the libretto took some inspiration from it. This isn't the only possibility though. Another candidate, and my personal favorite, is a story from the Volsunga saga which details the tragic life of the Valkyrie Brunhild. Written in the 13th century, more than 500 years before the Stolen Veil, the Volsunga saga tells of how King Agnar stole Brynhild's magical swan shirt and forced her to swear an oath of loyalty to him, similar to how Freebert stole the Swan Maiden's veil. Brunhild's oath forces her to intervene on Agnar's behalf during a battle.
Remember a viewer making me fight the local legends of Fontaine with an underprint 70 Ayatan unbuilt characters. Did you win? I think you lost. Oof. That's why you should build your characters as soon as you get them. Yeah. Though I don't do that myself. I did not win as expected. Underbuilt characters and under level, no chance.
Despite Odin's desire for Agnar to lose, and his punishment, Odin sticks her with a sleep thorn and surrounds her with a wall of fire. Then, as she falls asleep, she vows to only awaken to marry a man who's brave enough to leap through the flames. The hero named Sigurd goes on to take this leap not once, but twice. Only the second time he's disguised as his friend Gunnar, so Brunhild is tricked into marrying Gunnar instead. Once again, we have the inclusion of a doppelganger that ruins the Swan Maiden's chances for true love and happiness, only instead of her lover being fooled, it was the maiden herself. Though, now that I think about it, Sigurd does have his memory of meeting Brunhild erased after drinking a potion, which is why he's willing to jump through the fire on Gunnar's behalf that second time. So I guess both parties were duped. Also, instead of her responding to that realization by throwing herself off a cliff like Odette did, Brunhild gets even with her deceiver and has Sigurd killed, only to immediately regret it and throw herself on his funeral pyre so they can be together in the afterlife. Are you seeing all the similarities? There's the cursed Swan Maiden, the doppelganger, the tragic ending. It's not surprising that people think it may have influenced the ballet's story, or at least influenced the work that would later influence the ballet's story. You see, there's another popular theory that Swan Lake was inspired by the works of German composer Richard Wagner, and we know for a fact that Wagner based his productions on the Volsunga saga, which contains Brunhild's story. So it's very possible that the libretto's author indirectly based the Swan Maiden on the most famous Valkyrie in all of Norse mythology without even realizing it. Which is even cooler when you consider that the Volsunga saga is supposedly a mythologized account of real historical events. As I mentioned earlier though, there are tons of other stories about Swan Maidens. These are the two that are most commonly linked to Swan Lake, but when you hear variants from other countries and time periods, you can't help noticing they have a lot in common. But before we dive into those stories, I want to say thanks to our friends at Squarespace for sponsoring
Not my sponsor. Not my sponsor.
Purchase of a website or
Swan
Over the course
Maiden.
of humanity's history, we've created and shared thousands of stories with each other. Valuable stories meant to entertain, educate, and enlighten. As our world has become more advanced and connected, these stories have gone from being passed on orally to being collected and reprinted in books, and nowadays, many are preserved online. But with thousands of stories being collected from every corner of the world, how do folklore scholars keep the collection organized? The answer is the Arn Thompson Uther Tale Type Index. That's the official system used to categorize folk tales based on the archetypes and motifs they have in common. For example, Hansel and Gretel are considered 327A, the children and the witch. Chicken Little is 20C, the end of the world, and Bluebeard is type 312. Women whose brothers rescue them from their ruthless husbands or abductors. Obviously, these categories can get pretty specific. The stories you heard last section would be classified under ATU 400 and labeled the Swan Maiden, along with dozens of tales from other countries and cultures. Only here's the deal. While the details of those stories can vary from version to version, their overall structures are nearly identical. For example, the first act almost always includes the hero discovering a secluded body of water with a bunch of girls bathing in it and then finding their swan skins on the shore, which show him that these maidens are animorphs. Sometimes Sometimes the hero is a widowed hunter who's guided by an old hermit, like in the German story, The Three Swans, but other times he's a young hunter who almost shoots one of the swans before seeing them transform into beautiful ladies.
Also
This
what
is
we
the
see in
case
the
in the
movies.
Swedish fairy tale simply called The Swan Maiden, and a similar interaction happens between Odette and Siegfried in most versions of the Swan Lake Ballet, as well as the animated films based on it. The hero then steals one of the swan covers.
I've had a lot of nicknames given to me, but corpse husband or Scrodingerly are the ones that describe me. The corpse husband. Why? You do not have the voice of corpse. Nor the vibe. I'm gonna be honest. Nor the vibe. Why did they call you corpse husband?
Coverings and refuses to give it back to the maiden unless she marries him. And from there, the story can go in one of two directions. In direction one, she agrees to the marriage, but the hero has to survive 3 challenges that are set by her father, who can sometimes be a dragon, a king, a sorcerer, or a god. In direction 2, the hero actually hides her swan skin so his love is trapped in her human form. Then one day, when he's out of the house, she discovers her old wings and flies away. After she disappears, most stories go into detail about the husband's difficult journey in bringing her back, which usually entails sailing to a distant and dangerous land, along with some personal development. But in others, like the Swedish variant, the husband just gets really depressed after his wife escapes and he dies of sadness.
Damn.
It's a pretty sad ending, until you remember that this guy forced the maiden into being his wife for years before she got away. As you may have guessed.
Shoot. My friend called me corpse husband if I don't dilly-dally. Dilly-dally. Okay. You and your friends do your thing. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Gathered, the forced relationship is a pretty common theme in these fairy tales. There's even a specific variant from the 1001 Nights collection called Hassan of Basra that goes into detail about the depression and loneliness Hassan's swan maiden wife feels after years of marriage to him, which makes it pretty difficult to root for the guy when he goes on his journey to bring her back home. What's really interesting, though, is that while the Swan Maiden stories tend to involve some kind of tragedy, whether it be a forced marriage, a death, or total abandonment, there are a few fairy tales about men who are turned into swans, and they're very different.
Really?
One such story was included in a collection the Grimm brothers
Oh,
published back in
really?
1812. It's called The Six Swans, and in it, 6 brothers are cursed by their evil stepmother and turned into swans. Then, their sister has to spend the next 6 years knitting them new shirts out of nettles, a kind of leaf or plant or something.
What?
But that's not all. To make the situation even more stressful, she can't speak a word the entire time, which almost gets her burned at the stake when people suspect her of witchcraft. The Danish author Hans Christian Andersen adapted this story a few decades later and called it The Wild Swans, but it's pretty much the same as the Grimm brothers version, with a sister rescuing her brothers from their feathery prisons. The point I'm trying to make is that depending on the gender of the affected, the Swan Maiden form can be a gift or a curse. In all the Swan Maiden stories we covered today, it appears to be
Scrodingly is one of the nicknames I gave myself. Why?
a gift, because the women
It's
turned
also
into
hard to
swans voluntarily
pronounce.
and then were trapped in their human form after men stole
At least
their
the
wings.
read.
Meanwhile, the stories about male swans portrayed the men as trapped
Too many
in their
letters.
bestial state and needing a woman's love and devotion to transcend it. To put it another way, the tales about swan maidens have them running from men, while the tales about male swans have them running to women. Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake was the first telling to flip this around, where the maiden is trapped in the body of a swan and needs a man's love to be free. If I'm being perfectly honest, though, I think that imprisonment theme transcends the swan archetype, at least when we're talking about men. Because whether it's the Wild Swans, the Frog Prince, or Beauty and the Beast, fellas are always being rescued from their animal forms by pretty ladies. There's obviously stories where men rescue women from horrible fates, like Cinderella, Snow White, and Sleeping Beauty, but there's something about the swan form that seems to be preferable for female characters specifically. This may have something to do with what swans symbolize. These lovebirds have been around for thousands of years and are known to mate for life. So religions and cultures all around the world think of them as emblems of love, devotion, and romance. Hence their association with the Greek
see.
goddess of love, Aphrodite. Swans also
Oh.
symbolize virginal and spiritual purity, qualities that men have prized in women since the earliest days of humankind. I think that's
Oh, the
why
more
in
you
many Swan
know.
Maiden stories, the men have to pass trials in order to secure their ladies' hands in marriage. Trials that are often assigned by the would-be bride's fathers. Because
Yeah.
true Swan Maidens don't just settle for anyone. Their love has to be earned, and that could require anything from slaying the dragon that guards their prison to suffering through an entire Taylor Swift concert. I know which
What?
serpent I'd rather deal with, but what do you think, mere mortals? Do you have any
think-
thoughts on Swan Maiden stories you'd like to share? Maybe a fairy tale I didn't mention, or your own analysis about the significance of these kinds of stories? Let me know in a comment down below, or if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, reach out to us on social media. You can find us under the handle
What
at
do
Messed Up
I
Origins on Twitter and
think about
Instagram,
this
or you can
one
follow the links in our description. I'll see you all
princess?
again next week when I take my first real swing at producing short form content, and then again on the 26th with more of the Messed Up Origins content you know and love. I really
Yeah,
hope
this was
change
2
in
years
uploading
ago.
schedule doesn't bum you guys out too hard, because chances are it's only temporary, but I really want to experiment with exploring topics from mythology and folklore that are just too low-key or not enough information is out there to make a full-length video like today's episode. I also think that by taking 2 weeks to work on each Messed Up Origins episode instead of one, the quality of the final product is
This
going
is
to be better
just
than it
the
ever
outro?
has been. So be on the lookout for an all-new kind of content next week, followed by even more Messed Up Origins the following Thursday. Your support in this experimental phase means the absolute world to me, and I'll do everything I can to not let you down like I've let down my family, friends, pets,
Okay.
neighbors, and pizza delivery guys. Bubba wants to join for the last line.
Oh,
apparently.
doggy.
Couldn't have the first video of 2023 without him, right? Are you
Oh.
regretting it now? Until next time, my name is John Solo, and don't forget, John shot first.
Yeah. It's so weird to think about your IRL self versus online persona and how you act offline. I'm pretty much the same, online and offline. I'm the same. No difference. I mean, probably just a little bit more energetic online, but that's just so I'm not too quiet, you know, because I'm a quiet person. That's the only thing. That's why when I say things online, they tend to be like really dumb stuff. It's because I don't think, because I want to say stuff fast. I don't want to be quiet for too long. But yeah, otherwise I'm pretty much the same online and offline. Okay, see, 1 hour and 35 minutes. What do I think about the Swan Princess? What can I say? No, I don't think anything can beat Beauty and the Beast. Like, dude, that one was weird. That was intense. Offline, I'm pretty quiet and talk about a lot of deep stuff, and online, I talk about Hawk, Twa, Skibidi, Sigma, Risk. Aha. I mean, yeah, I can understand that. Me too. I mean, I don't talk about the Haktua, Skibidi, Sigma, Risk, or anything like that, but I do say things or jokes that I would normally not say offline. I try to be a little bit more how do I say it? Less shy, or just say whatever is being said like online. Except for Haktua Skibidi Sigma, that's way too cringy for me. And yeah, I try to keep up with the trends and all that online, but offline I'm like I'm not doing anything online, so I just keep that away from my vocabulary because I don't really care. And I do tend to talk about deep stuff, but unlike you, I talk about the deep stuff online. I think my real self is getting to my stream, so and that's good. I think that's good. I think that's good. No, and then it's not too tiring to keep two different personalities, you know? Because I'm pretty sure I would be dead if I had two different personas. My quiet, well-mannered self, that's IRL, and a very, very unsafe so persona online. No, I'm just me. Well-mannered, say so. I can be on say so. I do swear a lot. Yes, I mess up my words. I talk without thinking, always. Just a little bit more online. But yeah, I am me. I just play and swear a bit and talk to chat. Yeah, that's pretty much what you need to do. That's the only thing you need to do. And be yourself. I think being yourself is good. I think being yourself online is good. Less tiring, you know? Okay, I think we can actually watch the origins of the Princess and the Frog. I think we have time. Yeah, we can do this. We can. Alright, last one.
What is going on, Disney?
Let's hope that no one in chat makes me fight the capybara boss again. What if I make you fight it, huh? What if I make you fight it, Claire? What if I tell you to fight it?
Folklore fans, my name is John Solo, and this is Messed Up Origins, the show where I explore the horrifying history of your favorite fairy tales. Some say I ruin said fairy tales in the process, others say I make them better. All I really care about is you walking away
To make them better. I have not been traumatized yet. Not enough, at least. I mean, Beauty and the Beast was kind of bad, but didn't ruin my childhood. Did not traumatize me enough. No, yes, do it. Fight the capybara boss. 'Cause I have no clue who that is, though.
from this feeling educated, entertained, and a little bit enlightened. Now this is a very
Gonna
special
wag its
episode of Messed
button
Up
like
Origins
that
because
Arlecchino.
today we're revisiting The
Too bad.
Princess and
Do
the
it.
Frog, a Disney movie that I covered more than 4 years ago in the early days of the show, when my research process wasn't quite as comprehensive as it is nowadays. I compared it to the Grimm brothers version of the story, which is definitely messed up, and the earliest version ever published, but there are several other cultures with their own even more messed up renditions that I
Grimm
can't
brothers
believe I
have
didn't
them
bother to mention.
too?
The movie also leans heavily into voodoo culture, with its antagonist, Dr. Facilier, being inspired by Baron Samedi, but he's getting a video of his own in a few weeks, so keep an eye out if that interests ya. In this episode, we're specifically focused on what inspired the plot of Princess and the Frog, where the earliest stories about Frog Princess came from, and most importantly, the grotesque ways that these poor maidens had to break the curse before the introduction of the magical princess kiss. No, I'm sorry to say that none of the stories you're gonna hear today end as romantically as the one that Tiana hears in the movie. Pretty much all of them are either violent or depressing.
Really? Try me.
So to those who haven't seen Princess and the Frog in a while, or have never seen it, let's do a quickie review of the plot.
Yes,
There's
please.
a
I haven't
lot
watched
going
it
on
in
here.
3 years.
The movie follows a waitress named Tiana, who spends just about every waking second working so she can save up money to buy her own restaurant and fulfill the lifelong dream of her dead father. She does end up meeting her goal and makes an offer on a space, but she's outbid at the last minute and starts to question if all this hard work was for nothing. Enter the Frog Prince. He tells Tiana that if she gives him a kiss and breaks the curse put on him by the voodoo shaman Dr. Facilier, that'll give her all the money she wants for her restaurant. But things don't go as planned. Because Tiana's not a real princess, only dressed like one, she was turned into a frog, forcing her to join the helplessly spoiled Prince Naveen in his quest to break the curse and become human. A pretty clever reversal of the usual fairy tale, right? Well, it turns out we can't give Disney all the credit for that one. While they certainly took inspiration from the Frog Prince stories that many of us heard growing up, and Louisiana culture, of course, the story's framework was taken.
Never heard about the frog, the Princess and the Frog story. And maybe once, but I don't remember. I don't remember anything about it if I've ever heard one. But yeah, enlighten me.
from a
Jump solo.
2002 novel called The Frog Princess by E.D. Baker. In that
Frog
novel, a
Princess.
princess named Emma kisses a frog named Eodric to try and break the curse placed on him by an evil witch. But just like Tiana, she turns into a frog herself, and the duo sets out to find a good witch, Emma's Aunt Gracina, who can tell them how to change back. Also like Tiana and Naveen, Emma and Eodric are accompanied by a flying critter and a reptile. Only in their case, it's a bat and snake instead of a firefly and alligator. It's similar to how Tiana and Naveen's adventure begins when they're pursued off of Charlotte's property by her dog. Emma and Eodric are chased by a dog through the entirety of their story. That's just about where those similarities end, but we can't forget about the centuries-old folklore that Baker put a twist on with her novel and may have inspired a few key details in The Princess and the Frog.
Okay, the Frog Prince.
So it turns out people have been enjoying stories about princes being turned into frogs for a really long time.
Really?
So long, in fact,
Why?
that the creation of these tales goes beyond the revolutionary practice of writing things down. As a result, it's impossible to say when exactly the earliest variant of the story was told. But we do know that the earliest published rendition can be traced to Germany in 1812. The Grimm brothers, Jacob and Wilhelm, collected the story from the Wilde family
love
living
the
in Kassel,
Grimm
Germany
brothers.
in 1810. At that point, they had titled it The Princess and the Enchanted Prince, but by the 1812 publication, it was changed to The Frog King, then changed again in 1857 to The Frog Prince. As far as I can
Okay.
tell, their version provided the outline for the variants found in Ireland, Scotland, Denmark, and several other countries, which were all published after. Now, to
So
clarify, just
many.
because one story was collected and published after another one doesn't always mean it's not as old. In this case, though, I'd be willing to bet that the popularity of the Grimm Brothers collection led to a few spin-offs in other countries. Anyway, let's get into their story, shall we? It starts by introducing us to a beautiful young princess whose favorite way to pass time on hot summer days is going down to the well where it's cool and playing catch with her golden ball. One day, she has a case of the Butterfingers and drops the ball in the well, and as she watches
Butterfingers.
it disappear into the darkness, she begins to sob uncontrollably. At that moment, a frog pops his head out of the water to figure out what the commotion's about, and when the princess tells him her situation, he offers to retrieve the ball for her if she does the following. Love me and accept me as a companion and playmate, and let me sit next to you at your table, and eat from your golden plate, and drink from your cup, and sleep in your bed. If you promise this to me, then I'll dive down and bring your golden ball back.
Okay, that sounds like a friend, like a best friend, not gonna lie. Or a pet. That sounds like a pet.
Back to you. Now, you may not have realized this at first, but this setup is awfully similar to Princess and the Frog. In both cases, the heroine loses her grip on what she held most dear, and at her lowest moment, a frog shows up to offer a solution. Also, in both cases, the princess is disgusted by the frog, though I do love that Charlotte was all about kissing one if it was
Yeah.
in the name of true love. As grossed out as our princess is, though, it
I
barely
love
takes a
the
moment
friend.
of pondering the proposal for her to agree, because it's a frog. What's he gonna do if she lies? Shoot slime at her?
It is not slime. It is mucus.
Well, guess
Isn't
what?
it
The princess was lying,
worse?
and as soon as the frog emerged with the ball, she grabbed it and ran straight home. The next day, the princess is eating dinner with her father and all the people in his court when someone knocks at the door.
Oh
She
my
politely
God, that
excuses
actually
herself to
scared
see
me.
who it is, and she's shocked to find her frog fiance on
Ah,
the
that was bad. Oh, that knocking sound has me traumatized. Oh no, I got goosebumps. Oh no, don't do that.
other side, so she slams the door and runs back to the table. Right away, her father can see she's upset, and the princess has to explain the ridiculous situation she got herself into. Even more ridiculous is that her father is on the frog side. He's got a good point though. The king tells his daughter that she must honor the promises she makes, so she goes back to the front door and carries the frog to the dinner table. After the most miserable dinner of her life, where she had to let the frog eat off the same plate as her guest says that he wants to go to bed with her. Again, she starts to whine and complain, but again, her father gives her a lesson in honor. He says, "You should not despise someone who helped you in your time of need." So the princess uses 2 fingers to carry the frog to her bedroom and sets him down in the corner.
no,
But after
poor
she lays in
frog.
bed, he hops up to join her and says, "I want to sleep with you." Talk about entitled,
Ugh.
right? This dude's actually making Prince Naveen look humble. This is the last straw for the princess, who's done letting a frog boss her around. She picks him up like she's gonna place him in bed, but instead throws him at the wall as hard as she can, hopefully killing him. But when he hits
Damn.
the floor, he's no longer a frog, he's a prince. I know, who saw that coming? Turns out that much like Prince Naveen, this prince was cursed by an evil sorcerer with a spell that could only be broken by a princess. He doesn't explain why throwing him at the wall was what broke the curse though, just that a princess had to rescue him from the well. For all we know, she could have literally picked him out of the well and immediately spiked him on the ground like a football to cure him, which would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
Back to the story, after seeing his true handsome self, the princess agrees to marry the prince. The two spend that night together, and the next morning, a carriage pulled by 8 beautiful horses arrives at her castle. Sitting in front is the prince's faithful servant, Heinrich, who's basically the opposite
Heinrich.
of Prince Naveen's traitorous servant, Lawrence. Instead of being a snake in the grass and betraying the prince, Heinrich had 3 iron bands placed around his heart to keep it from bursting with sadness after his master was cursed. And get a load of this, the story ends with the prince and princess riding the carriage off into the sunset while hearing the distinct sound of those iron bands breaking because Heinrich is so happy to have his master back that his heart is swelling with joy. In fact, some say
Aww.
that his heart grew 3 sizes that day.
The curse. No, but wait a second. The prince was being a douche, and after becoming a prince, like his human form, the princess is like, oh my god, you're so handsome. I don't care if you were a douche. Tell me that wanted to sleep with me. You're so handsome, so yes, I want to marry you. Who in their right mind would do that? Like, girl, no, that's not how it works. No. She's only going for the looks, Emma. No. That's not how it works. Not good.
As I mentioned the first time I covered Princess and the Frog's origins, there are literally dozens of similar stories about princes who were turned to frogs. However, a lot of them were inspired by the version the Grimm brothers collected, so there's quite a bit of overlap when it comes to the main story beats. The one detail that consistently varies from version to version is how the prince's curse is broken, so that's what I want to spend this section talking about. In the movie, the rules to the curse are very clear.
Like I told y'all, kissing a princess breaks the spell.
Once you became my wife, that made you...
A princess.
But in the story, not so much. The direct quote from the version I just read you is this. He told her how he had been enchanted by a wicked witch and that she alone...
Instead of pausing, I muted my mic. Whoops. In the book here, the prince looks like a girl. Their eyes look like those old anime. They like really long lashes and juicy lips. Like, looks funny.
could have rescued him from the well, and that tomorrow they would go together to his kingdom. That's it. It sounds like his fate was connected to that specific princess, but we aren't told if that's because she was a princess or something else about her. Maybe the fact that she was disgusted by frogs was supposed to be an added layer of protection? But wait, she didn't rescue him from the well, did she? She ran away, unless they count her accepting his proposal as rescuing, but I would say that's pushing it. Even though we can't say for certain what the rules were or why being thrown at the wall was the cure, there are plenty of other versions with even more violent ends. There's one collected from Denmark called The Singing Frog, and for the most part, it's exactly the same as the German version, except the frog sings everything he says.
Now I know
Also, instead of a princess, it's the
frog.
daughter of a priest, and she's a servant to the king, who orders her to do what the frog says, not to teach her a lesson about making promises, but more so out of curiosity. At the end of the story, the frog asks the servant girl to use a needle to poke 3 holes in his leg and draw 3 drops of blood. When she does this, he turns into a handsome prince and reveals he's actually the king's son who was bewitched many years ago, hence explaining the king's curiosity. Once again, we aren't given a clear explanation for why that was the cure, but given the specificity of the request, I would imagine that it stems from witchcraft. Regardless, our boy is human again and wants to marry the servant girl. There's a plot twist incoming though. The servant girl has a boyfriend. His name is Peter, and since he technically has dibs, the prince has to give him some land in exchange for the servant girl's hand, which I'll be honest, would be a pretty sweet deal for Peter. Another version, called The Well of the World's End, was collected in 1890 by Joseph Jacobs, with variants being traced to both Ireland and Scotland. At the end of this story, the Frog Prince tells us exactly how the curse was broken. He had to get a girl to do his bidding for an entire night, then chop off his head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just a little less romantic than a kiss. Funnily enough, while our other heroines would have likely leapt at the opportunity to silence the stupid frog for good, the princess in this story was actually opposed to the idea until he explained to her why she had to do it. Then, after she does the deed, a handsome prince emerges from the frog's corpse, and then she moves into his father's castle with him. Now, so far, we've got a prince who was thrown at a wall, another who needed a blood transfusion, and another who had to have his head cut off. I can't be the only one wondering at this point when kissing was brought into this mess. Well, I'm happy to say that we actually have an answer to that question. In 1888, a short story called Penny Jack was collected from a beggar woman living in, I think I'm saying this right, Bretagne, France, and published in a newsletter. Considering its source and the obscurity of the story here in the West, I don't think it was necessarily the domino that changed the way that all frog stories written after it would end, but given how unique the story is, I at least wanted to mention it. Because unlike every other story we've talked about today, this one isn't about a frog prince, rather a frog princess, and our unlikely hero, Penny Jack, saves her by kissing her not once, not twice, but 3 separate times.
Damn.
And the kicker? After every kiss, the frog got more and more hideous. I'm pretty sure the only reason Penny Jack went through with it is because she kept giving him gold as a thank you. So even when there finally is a kiss, it's not even one of true love. Homie is literally being bribed. I guess in that way, Disney's adaptation does stay pretty loyal to the source material. There is no way that Tiana would have kissed that frog if she weren't getting something out of it. And if you don't believe me, just ask her yourself.
There is no way in this whole wide world I would ever, I mean never, kiss a frog.
See what I mean?
It was so cute. Evangeline.
I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. The first time that I watched The Princess and the Frog, I thought that Ray the Firefly and his obsession with Evangeline the Star was super random and kind of stupid. I did think it was pretty cute that when he died at the end of the movie, he joined her in the sky, but just like his friends, I kind of wanted him to shut up about her. Naturally, with me being me, I decided to look into where the seemingly random storyline came from, and it turns out there is some source material to refer to, and it's not what I expected. I thought it would be something like an Aesop fable about a firefly being in love with a star, but actually the inspiration comes from a pretty sad Cajun poem called Evangeline. Written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in 1847, the epic follows a young Acadian woman named Evangeline as she searches for her lover Gabriel during the expulsion of the Acadians. For those who don't know, because I was never taught this in my history class, Acadia was a colony of New France located in the northeastern United States. And in 1755, the British decided they wanted that land, so they forcibly relocated over 10,000 Acadians to the 13 colonies, as well as Britain and France.
Classic history class.
Of them being killed from disease and shipwrecks. The poem doesn't provide the most accurate history of the Acadian expulsion, but it's been celebrated for capturing the emotions and heartbreak that the Acadians endured. But as you would expect at this point in our series, Evangeline the poem's ending is a lot darker than Ray's, and it's not just because he has a light bulb for a bud. Although Ray's death is needlessly caused by Dr. Facilier, Disney softens the blow for us by reuniting him with Evangeline, who I prefer to believe was his little bug wife before she became a star. In the Evangeline poem, though, basically the opposite happens. Evangeline does get to reunite with her beloved Gabriel while they're alive, but it's after they've grown old, and Evangeline just happens to find her long-lost love among the sick men being treated at the hospital where she's volunteering, and he dies in her arms only a few moments later. What'd I tell ya? Depressing. So let me tell you about another coincidence that's much funnier than Evangeline finding her soulmate on his deathbed. During our research for this episode, we actually found a Korean variant of the Frog Prince that ends with the recently saved prince revealing he's the son of the King of Stars, and the story concludes with him leaving Earth and a new star forming in the sky. After reading that version, I had to look into the movie's development more because it seemed way too coincidental to be random chance, but the writers only cited the Evangeline poem as inspiration, and apparently stars being associated with fireflies is a callback to Timon in Lion King.
They're fireflies. Fireflies that got stuck up in that big bluish black thing.
Oh, gee. I always thought they were balls of gas burning billions of miles away.
What?
Pumbaa, with you, everything's gas.
So maybe it is just a coincidence, but personally, I would prefer it not to be. Also, for those curious about the Korean version, I'm considering covering it for the 3rd episode of Featured Folklore, but I'll just go ahead and spoil it now. The curse is broken when the frog's new bride cuts him open with scissors.
What?
It doesn't get much more romantic than that.
What?
I really don't get why Disney didn't take more ideas from this one.
Analysis.
One aspect of the Frog Prince stories that I find really interesting is their moral, because what is it supposed to be? It's not quite as clear-cut like Little Red Riding Hood, who learned the hard way not to talk to strangers, or even Jack, who found out that the only way to get the golden goose is to get off the couch, climb the beanstalk, and face whatever dangers lie ahead. In the Grimm Brothers variant, I think the easy lessons to take out are to think your promises through, honor them when you make them, and don't disregard someone who needs your help because you don't know who they are or what they've been through. My
Don't
only issue with
judge
that
a
takeaway
book
is
by
that
its
unlike
cover.
Jack and the Beanstalk, the princess didn't fulfill her promise voluntarily. She had to be dragged every step of the way, she bailed out as soon as she could sneakily dispose of the frog, then she got to reap the benefits, and that's the case with every other version as well. You could argue that the princess's attitude doesn't really matter considering that she made it to the finish line and that was enough for her to get her happy ending, but in real life, you're not always going to have someone like the king watching over you to make sure that you do the right thing. So if you are going to do something difficult, something that forces you to adapt and meet some of your potential, make sure that you don't resent that thing before you commit to it, because the likelihood of it ever turning into a handsome prince is pretty slim. Now, if you're a longtime fan of Messed Up Origins, you may remember that back in August, I went through every episode of Disney Explained and ranked it by how messed up it was, and The Princess and the Frog did not score very well. But like I said in that video, I knew it was a story that I'd be revisiting soon and would probably have to re-rank, so here we are. Where is Princess and the Frog's rightful place on the tier list? Well, even when you take into consideration the additional stories we covered today, the darkest element is still how the curse is broken. An act of violence upon the prince. He's spiked at the wall, beheaded, impaled with needles, and cut open with scissors. And these are all kids' stories. But another factor we have to consider is the Evangeline poem, which is not only depressing in its own right, but inspired by horrific political decisions that caused the deaths of thousands of people. Granted, it doesn't use any of these events to tell its story, so I can't give it too much of a bump for that, but still worth a few notches in my opinion. So I'm placing it in the C tier. Aw, now Dumbo's all alone in the F rank. I hope you're happy, Solo fam. If you are, let me know in a comment down below. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on the story now that we've explored the messed up origins of it a little more. Was it darker than you anticipated? Which fairy tale is your favorite? And is there a unique version from your country that I should know about?
Remember ever
If you
hearing
haven't
all
already,
the
be sure
stories
to
about the
make a
Princess
wish
and the
upon those
Frog.
like and
No.
subscribe buttons to get more
It
messed
was
up
kinda
origins content
dark.
delivered to
It
your
was
sub
kinda
box and
darker than the
recommended
movie.
feed every
Yeah.
week. Follow me on the social medias to
Yeah.
stay updated on news about the show, get hints about what topics are coming up next, or send me suggestions directly. And if you want to go the extra mile to support what I do here on Messed Up Origins and get some behind the scenes access, consider joining our Patreon and Discord for $1. And don't forget to follow my own
Oh
little
my
frog
god,
princess,
another doggy.
Penny. Will you become human if I give you a smooch? I guess not. I'll see you all again next week when we celebrate the start of March with some Celtic folklore. Until then, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.
Okay, we managed to watch them all. Okay. My favorite was definitely Beauty and the Beast. That was the most messed up one. I will never get over the fact that on the books they are relatives. Or was it first cousin or siblings? No, I think they were first cousins. But damn, yeah. So that's the part I won't ever get over. That's the only part that traumatized me in a way. But yeah, anyway, it was a good one. It was really good. It was really good. Next time I really wanna react to the zodiac signs, messed up origins. Or like I apparently I did watch. No, I didn't watch it. I listened to it. The like villains, ghost stories, and so on. Like for example, the gargoyles, the deadliest yokai. Also want to react to the Norse mythology and Greek mythology as well, because I really like Greek mythology. Yeah, so maybe actually he has like the messed up mythology of every astrology sign. Maybe I watch that one. But yeah, I mean there are some of these videos. I looked through them. I won't react to because, for example, where is it? I saw one of the messed up origins of Caroline. I haven't watched Caroline, so I won't really be able to like react. Oh yeah, it's messed up. But then, like, I can watch the messed up origins of the Wendigos. There are a few other things I want to react that Jon Solo has. His videos are really good. Oh yeah, okay. That's it for today. We managed to get through all of them. It was interesting. It was surprising, I guess. So yeah, I'll see you next week on Tuesday if I am not too sick. I'll try to stream Omori. I really want to stream Omori again, but my throat hurts way too much to like read. So we'll see. We'll see what I play on Tuesday. I don't know. Well, yeah, until then, I'll see you later. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.